It was just 4 short years ago when the Toronto Raptors and 1 million of their closest friends celebrated their NBA championship with a parade for the ages. It all seems like part of the team's distant past. This year, they didn't even make the playoffs. It led to big changes in the organization on and off the court. What's needed to get the team moving in a more winning direction? Let's ask freelance basketball journalist Katie Heindl, who is the creator behind the Basketball Feelings podcast and newsletter, and Vivek Jacob, freelance sports journalist and staff writer for Raptors.com. Thank you both for joining us in studio. We're going to talk shiny new additions. Gradey Dick, 13th overall. This is a beautiful photo. Shoulder pads and all, red sequins. It's like he knew he was coming to the Raptors. Vivek, I'll come to you first. Overall thoughts on this pick. Does this answer a lot of holes for the team?
It answers one major hole, which was shooting, and that's something the Raptors have lacked over the last couple of years. And so to bring him in, have his outside shot, that's something the Raptors will really rely on. And the fact that he's not just someone who can catch and shoot, like he can shoot in a lot of different ways, and I think especially off the dribble, that's something that's going to help as well. And yeah, overall, for sure, the shooting is a major need.
Katie, high IQ, 6'8", fills in that sort of typical, if we look at sort of the roster, fits that scheme. Defensively, some questions there, but overall, thoughts on Gradey Dick?
Yeah, I think there are always going to be, defensive questions, especially with a rookie, coming in like that. I think the bigger need that we haven't mentioned yet is the vibes need, generally.
The vibes.
And just like the general, just like getting back to a more positive atmosphere, getting back to just some more energy on the team. Things were pretty dire, I think, as we saw the team leave this season. I mean, that's being generous. You could go all the way back to January and pre-All-Star break, but I think just what we've seen of him so far, his confidence is just like the TikToks are worth a deep dive if anybody wants to go check those out. But I also just think for a lot of the young guys like Precious Achiuwa, Scotty Barnes to be able to play off of on the floor, and this is a team that wants to focus more on getting back to development, getting back to the basics in that sense. So I think he's coming also into a program that's going to be the perfect fit for him.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, because you did get a chance to chat with him. How does he fit on and off the court? I know he does a few impersonations. He's a bit of a goofball.
Yeah, I mean, he does a Donald Duck voice, which he learned from his grandpa. And,
Can you give us a little taste of what you got? No.
No, absolutely not. But I think he's someone who's going to be, a positive influence in the locker room. I think he seems like the type of personality who has learned to take losses in stride and just maintain a positive, demeanor throughout it all. And I think that's really important for a young kid coming in. And I think beyond that, the fact that he already has a bit of a relationship with Scotty Barnes, I think that helps. And he seems to really get along with the coach already, Darko Rajakovic. And I think that can only lead to positive things as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, on that note, we have a photo. Obviously, we have a new head coach here. This is a photo of Darko with Raptors president Masai Ujiri. Katie, how different will he be from Nurse?
I think very different. I mean, you could go back to maybe the early days of Nurse's tenure, or even go back farther to when Nick was an assistant with the team. Again, to just touch on that developmental caliber. Darko's been a coach for almost 2 decades now. He's coached he's coached internationally. He's coached with OKC, the Memphis Grizzlies, and now Toronto. I think he's such an energetic guy. He's a bit younger. He's very relentlessly positive, which again, I feel like is something that the team just needs in spades right now. So from what we saw, we were at his introductory presser, just he's so excited to be here, so thrilled to be here. I think the organization setting up such an event to welcome him also shows that they're really willing to turn over a new leaf for him. And I mean, they've brought Gemma Malala back, who was with the Warriors, another developmental asset, and just again, relentlessly positive. But we've been around him like a relentlessly positive guy. All of this to me speaks so well for the kind of chemistry rebuild that I think the team needs right now.
You say rebuild. It's not unusual for Masai to go off the board. There were a lot of big names for head coaches this summer. He goes with someone that a lot of people were like, who's that? Obviously has the credentials there, but a lot of people digging. I'm curious, does this decision to hire Darko change sort of the direction of the team? We talk about player development, that's where he's at. Are we at instant success? Are we contending? Where do we stand on that?
Yeah, I think the Raptors are still deciding on that. I think when they look at what they have to do in free agency, that'll have a big say in terms of being able to bring back Fred VanVleet and Jakob Poeltl. But I think they wanted a coach who was comfortable going either way. And so with Darko Rajakovic's history, they probably said, hey, the team last year they didn't fulfill their potential. So if we get the vibes right, if we get the positivity back, what does this team look like? And then if they're still underperforming, then you can go from there. I think that's the way they're leaning right now. And then if it comes to it, and again, you look at Darko Rajakovic, for all the experience he has, he doesn't have head coaching experience. You look at the assistants that they've brought in, none of them have head coaching experience. And so that does leave a bit of a concern in terms of trying to win at the highest level. And so if they aren't able to get things right off the top and say, you're 20 games into the season and you only have, 7 or 8 wins, then there's going to be a lot of questions asked.
I will quickly just add that, just to push back on you a little, Nurse obviously didn't have head coaching experience at that time in the NBA. So I think the Raptors, I really like them going outside of what we would call like this insular NBA head coaching pool, which sometimes gets to feel like musical chairs a little bit when you see the same names pop up for team after team. Obviously, it can be a tried and true method. It works for some franchises, but I think it works for very established franchises, which already probably have a few superstars in place. That never hurts. So I think I like Toronto taking, it also feels disingenuous to say they're taking a chance on this guy because he's got the credentials. But I think to really turn over a new leaf in this way, I got a lot of confidence in the guy.
All right, I do want to pick a little bit about our former head coach. Any new insights as to what went wrong? I know, this was, we didn't make the playoffs. Was it just time for a new change, or were there some rumblings inside that, something else was going on?
I don't think you need to be like an empath to get a sense that there was a little bit of a disconnect, whether that was between Nurse and some of his coaching staff, or Nurse and some of the guys on the team. It just seemed to be a misfit. It seemed to get a lot worse as the season wore on. Obviously losing, nobody likes losing, and that's going to be terrible for morale as well. Nick Nurse is a technically great coach, but I think he coaches to a standard that's up here, and that makes sense considering the team he got when he was named head coach. What I didn't really like this past season was that he didn't necessarily adjust all the time, for the team he actually had. And a lot of the young players on the team, which we just didn't really see in the lineup. So I think there was a lot of strain. Again, I think it did just get worse. I haven't heard anything new other than I feel like it was probably a needed break on both sides.
Yeah, I think winning can mask a lot of things, and I think especially his public call-outs with players probably wore thin when you're losing and you don't have a distinct role. I think to handle things in-house first at least and go that route before you're publicly calling out a player and saying that they're not giving you out, and then they don't, even when they play well one night and then they don't play for the next 5 games. It's tough to find a rhythm that way. So I think all those things led to the changes that we've seen this summer so far.
Look, I think we can all say in Masai we trust, right? I think that generally that's the spoken word there. But is it time for the franchise to start looking beyond Masai? I know he had taken some responsibility at the end of the season, that it starts with him. But is it something? I know we're just getting into the summer and we're building a team, but is that something that we think about?
I feel like it's sacrilegious to think about that.
Right?
I mean, he's the leader of you could say the most successful Toronto sports franchise. He's made it that way. I don't think so. My thought has always been it's not going to be the Raptors leaving Masai behind. It will be the other way around. Right. And honestly, sometimes I think that won't even be for NBA aspirations, for something probably grander, He's so involved with his Giants of Africa Foundation and really worthwhile philanthropic ventures, and I think his head's sort of always on a swivel to a much broader global perspective. So I think that should potentially be the worry, not the worry of should MLSE move on from Masai. Not yet.
All right, I want to talk about our current roster. A few names, the big names we'll talk about. Pascal, gets a lot of flack throughout the season. Does he have another gear in him?
I think he's trying to find it. I think that's what we've watched play out ever since Kawhi Leonard left, and he was kind of put in this difficult situation where the Raptors didn't have any cap space or maneuverability after Kawhi left to try and bring in that type of player back. And so they said, hey, Pascal, here's the keys. Let's see what you've got. And I think he's definitely a far better player than he was even in 2018-19 when they won the championship. And he's made the All-NBA team twice since then. And I think, that sort of top echelon is just really, really tough to crack. And, you think about what he was when he came in versus where he is now. He's an incredible player, and the Raptors are lucky to have him. But you have some tough decisions to make right now because of the way the salary cap works and the contract he could potentially be eligible for.
All right. I want to pop up another photo because we're going to talk about the man beside Pascal. Katie, Fred VanVleet. How likely are we going to see him back in that jersey this fall?
I mean, I might be the rare voice that thinks very likely. Obviously, the money is going to be a big concern, and money talks, especially with the new CBA that was just introduced. But I think you look at this team, as raw as it seemed last season, it is getting a little bit more green this season with the addition of Gradey Dick, and you're gonna want to bring in Delano Banton, Jeff Doughton Jr. Some of the guys that didn't really get a chance to get minutes last season. I think you need a point guard.
Right.
This is just the basic fact, right? We all talk about Vision 6-9 and that the team can play positionless. They can to a point, but you need an organizer on the floor. I think Fred is that. Obviously, there's been some tension, within the franchise. Also, I think with what he wants, and if somebody like the Houston Rockets come in and offer him more, I think it will be really up to the Raptors to match. But that should be the first priority.
Well, let's talk about the rumors are just rumors sometimes, and sometimes as Raptor fans, maybe we don't want to look at that. But a lot of money has been reported. Michael Grange reported that the Rockets are planning to tempt Fred with $40 million per year. It would probably be a shorter contract. What's the likelihood of Freddie accepting something like that?
Yeah, so that's the belief right now, that Houston will offer a 2-year deal worth about $84 million. And if you're Fred VanVleet, I think that is very appealing because, one, you get that kind of money.
That's good money.
Number two, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel if things go wrong. And so if you don't like it, hey, it's a 2-year contract, and then you can figure your way out after that. And so I think the other thing that is kind of an underlying issue with the Raptors right now, and this probably goes back to the Masai conversation, is there has been whispers about ownership and what's changing with that. And so if you're Fred VanVleet and you feel like those wheels are turning and maybe there isn't the commitment to winning that there was prior to and in winning the championship, then maybe you decide to move on and then evaluate in a couple of years. So I think that's definitely a significant threat from the Houston Rockets. And to Katie's point, the Raptors absolutely cannot afford to lose him. And so if it gets into a bidding war, I think the Raptors have to keep up.
All right, I'm gonna throw some more rumors out there. D'Angelo Russell, spotted in Toronto, playing pickup ball at the University of Toronto, playing out on the East End as well. Are there any point guards that we should be eyeing? Is this something that we should be looking at? I know there was a couple of other players, not even to say, but is there potential that Lowry makes some sort of a comeback here to the Raptors as well?
I mean, that would be my personal dream. I don't think it's necessarily likely. I also wish that the Raptors were that blatant, like just suddenly turned that blatant with tampering that they invited D'Angelo Russell.
Right.
I believe his partner's from Oakville, so I think that's why he was up here, just in a casual trip.
There we go.
It is a pretty thin, I think you'd agree, like it is a pretty thin free agency. There are some guys that I just rooted for generally in the league, like Will Barton, who's with the Wizards now, who are in a bit of a rebuild. So perhaps, like if Fred were to go, the Raptors could get in there and potentially, I don't know what they would offer at this point, but get someone decent in return if you're trying to play Pascal and Scotty Barnes more in that point position. But I think you got to stand pat this summer. There's not a lot out there.
I think you can't afford to do anything else. The main thing is if Fred VanVleet decides to leave, there's no way to replace that. If Jakob Poeltl decides to leave, there's no way to replace that. And so I think they put themselves in a corner, and they absolutely have to bring them back.
All right, let's talk about some superstars, because you had mentioned there's not a lot out there. There are some that are available. The likelihood of them coming here, we don't know. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Chris Middleton, Draymond Green. There's an appetizing list of free agents out there. I'm just going to give you the reins here. If you could have any free agent out there right now that would address some of the issues, potentially superstar or filling in a role position, who are you gunning for? I'll start getting.
Just anybody, right?
Yeah, anybody.
I mean, this is such like a safe pick, but I have come around so hard on Chris Middleton just because he's just he's like your workaday guy. He's going to do anything you ask of him. Generally, also I understand like a lot of those other stars are going to go their own way. They can also be a bit mercurial, and Chris Middleton just isn't that.
He's an overall good guy. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with the best guy on the market, James Harden.
Really?
I mean, if you're throwing away, the money. I mean, the Raptors don't have the money to go after him, but if we're throwing all that aside, you go after the best guy. I think he's the best one available. And you look at a guy like Draymond Green, he wouldn't really fit this team right now. I don't think they want to deal with a Kyrie Irving on this team. So
fair enough. A lot has been made about the Canadian talent. Jamal Murray just winning his championship. Shea out of Hamilton just, has skyrocketed, getting some nods for MVP there. RJ Barrett doing a solid job in New York. What's the likelihood of securing a Canadian on this team, a star Canadian on this team? And should that be in the conversation when we look at Toronto Raptors, the lone Canadian team?
I mean, we shouldn't discount the already our star Canadians
That's
on the
correct.
team. Chris Boucher, Delano Ben, Toronto's own.
Yeah.
I think it perhaps would have been a priority for this team almost 2 seasons ago, the unfortunate Tampa season before they went to Tampa. But now I think it's more about retooling with who the Raptors have, keeping the guys that they have to keep. Sometimes to me, the Canadian thing seems like an optics play, and I would hope that those guys would eventually be desirous to come here. But some of the guys you mentioned, I think, are in pretty fantastic situations and don't necessarily want to leave them. I think we should be prideful enough to watch these guys play for Team Canada in that situation rather than keeping our fingers crossed that they're going to come to Toronto.
There, I'll get your take on that as well.
I'll keep my fingers crossed. I mean, the reality is Toronto hasn't been a superstar free agent destination. And so if you can appeal to the local guys, then why not? And so if there were to come a time where maybe, Jamal Murray has already won his championship in Denver, if he feels secure about that and wants to, maybe come home, absolutely.
Why aren't we a superstar destination? We've won in 2019. What do we need to do to cement, hey, this is... People like to say and shout out Toronto as the best city to travel to. Players mention that. But what is it? What is still holding us back?
Look, I think unquestionably it's one of the best cities in the NBA. And I think it just comes down to it, just not being LA. And, that type of conversation is what you get into. And, Kawhi Leonard was a perfect example, right? You had a championship team. You had a good chance of running it back and, going for another one. But he just wanted to be home. Yep. And you can't really argue against that, right? And he's spoken very highly of Toronto. And so, the reality is, for them to have 29 cities where, maybe they're more familiar with, to be there, it probably appeals to them. And it is what it is. And so that's where, again, you just got to take advantage. If you do have the guys who are from here and want to be here, why not go after them?
All right, we talked about home, so we're going to talk Team Canada. Jordi Fernandez, he was in the running for head coach for the Toronto Raptors, but he was named the new head coach for the Canadian men's basketball team. Is he the right choice to replace Nick Nurse?
I think so. I think again, there's a sense that. My sense was that Nick Nurse and probably Daryl Morey of the Sixers wanted Nick Nurse to just kind of cut ties with the Raptors, with Canada. And Jordy is a great coach. He was in the running for a reason. I think Team Canada could do with a nice, different kind of energy injection, different style of coaching. He already knows and has worked with a lot of the guys on the team, a lot of guys around the league. I think it's a great fit.
All right, Vivek.
I think the big thing for me would be just his offensive acumen. I think when you look at his history, he's been tied to Mike Brown for a long time, even with the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron was there the first time around. And so I think that history, and you look at the Sacramento Kings right now, one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league, what he would be able to bring to this Team Canada setup would be very intriguing.
This is a fairly talented Team Canada that's going into the World Cup this summer. Their eyes obviously on Paris. What's your prognosis for how far the men's team can go.
First, I want to shout out the women's team.
Let's shout them out.
Who I believe just made they qualified yesterday.
There you
So
go.
I feel like they're often overshadowed. They have long been the more talented team, consistently competitive team, I would say. So shout out to them. But I do think, again, Jamal Murray was injured the last time this happened. A lot of other guys weren't able to commit. So I think now with this coaching change, it is quite close to when they've got to start playing. But again, these are guys that are used to being thrown in the mix. If you look at the Olympics or now with Team Canada, they're used to being thrown in the mix. They watch each other play all the time. They can usually adapt pretty well to that. I don't know. I think there should be good momentum going into the qualifier.
You got the last word.
Yeah, you said the word commit, and I think that's been the biggest thing since they failed to qualify for the previous Olympics. Nick Nurse set a plan in place that, hey, we have to get serious about this. If you want to play in 2024, there has to be the commitment beginning in 2021. And that's where you saw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play throughout qualifying. And so now, being at the FIBA World Cup, I think that's a huge opportunity to secure qualification for the Olympics. And hopefully, the commitment continues beyond Nick Nurse's exit.
All right. They always say the regular season's the exciting part, but for me, it's the summer. This is where all this stuff happens. I want to thank you both for coming in. It's going to be an exciting summer and fall, and hopefully we have you guys back in the studio. Thank you so much.
Well,
Thanks so
David,
much for
thank you
having
so
me.
much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.